Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name's Katie. I'm a freelance editor and an indie author, but today I wanted to talk about some of the books that I've read so far this year. Admittedly, this year so far has been very heavy with the editing and the writing, and I feel like we haven't been able to talk about reading as much. So I know this isn't like exactly halfway through the year, I'm a little bit late, but today I thought it would be fun to talk about some of my favorite books that I've read so far this year. Obviously only within the published books that I've read. I actually calculated some stats for this video. Stats as in one stat. So far this year I've read 31 published books and I've read 23 client books, and I'm in the middle of like 5 more. So completed books that we've read so far this year, we have 54, which is honestly more than I thought I'd read. So basically the purpose of today's video is to talk about my favorites from the first half of the year, which honestly coming up with these books I thought might be hard because I haven't been giving ratings to books on Goodreads. Whole different topic. So I was like scrolling through all the books that I've read thinking I wasn't gonna know which ones were my favorites, but actually it was kind of a good experiment for myself because when I was looking at all of the books, like I knew immediately which ones were my favorites. So even without having like the ratings next to books, like I still look at a book and I still remember exactly the way that it made me feel. So anyway, I'll have all of the books that we talk about today linked down below in the description if you want to go check them out. Obviously, I recommend them. But before we get into my favorites, thank you so much to Book of the Month for sponsoring today's video. We've got 2 Book of the Month boxes today. If you're not familiar with Book of the Month, they are a monthly subscription service that sends you a brand new hardcover every month. You go onto their website and you can choose from 5 different options, and it's totally risk-free. If none of them really look that interesting to you in a month, you can just skip without having to pay for it, or you can let your credits carry over to another month and then you can add on other books on top of your monthly pick, which is why I have a second box because I did 2 add-ons. So we'll do a mini book haul here at the beginning. So if you've never tried Book of the Month before, I'll have a link down below in my description, as well as a code that you can use to get $5 off your first box, which means you're gonna get a brand new hardcover shipped to you for free for $10. And although Book of the Month occasionally has YA picks, they're usually adult, which means hardcovers are typically like $28. So getting one for $10, fabulous deal. So first I'm going to show you all of the options that they have for August, and then I'll show you which books I chose from their backlog as my add-ons for this month. So their first pick for August is The Unraveling of Cassidy Holmes, and this is actually an early release, which is something that's really cool about Book of the Month. Sometimes they have books early. This is contemporary fiction, and this is also a debut author. A journey through the dark side of pop music that illustrates the dangers and tragedies that come with celebrity. That description immediately makes me think of that like Daisy Jones and the Six book. Is that what it's called? I haven't read it, but I know everyone loves it. So maybe you'll like this one if you like that one. The second book has like a very sci-fi dystopian looking cover. It's called The Space Between Worlds. It is indeed sci-fi. And this is also a debut. This multiverse sci-fi blends social commentary with mind-boggling ideas, like seeing yourself in a parallel universe. Sci-fi has never been a genre that I like typically pick up, but I feel like it's the Blake Crouch books that I've read, which have been like a blend between sci-fi and thriller, that's got me more like willing to try that. Like parallel universe, that just like makes me think of the Blake Crouch books that I like so much. So I'm looking forward to trying this one. However, if I were to choose a book for this month for myself, it would be this next one, The Night Swim. This is a thriller. No surprise if you're familiar with my channel. I love me a good thriller. But specifically this one says, a thriller for those who eat, sleep, and breathe true crime. A podcaster cracks open a small town cold case. Like that sounds right up my alley. This next one also sounds really good. It's a historical romance and it's called Atomic Love. This isn't your typical romance. This is a badass Cold War Russian spy romance that throws you into all of the drama. Historical fiction is a genre I really want to try and read more of, and this sounds like something I could pretty easily get into. And then the final pick for this month is literary fiction. It's called The Death of, I'm really sorry if I mispronounced this, Vivek Oji. Feel free to correct me, I know I said that wrong. A reflective, deeply human read piecing together life in a Nigerian town leading up to a heartbreaking death. This sounds like it's gonna be really sad. I can't handle sad things right now, but it sounds like it's gonna be really good. So what's cool about Book of the Month is if you don't really like any of their picks for the month, you can go back and choose previous ones, or like we talked about earlier, you can skip it, or you can also, in addition to getting one of the monthly picks, add some on, which is what I did. So the 2 that I added on for myself, I finally got myself a copy of Beach Read. I've heard nothing but great things about this romance. It's about 2 writers, that's all I really know. They have neighboring beach houses, they're broke, and they both have writer's block. It sounds super cute. I love books with writers in it, unsurprisingly. And then I grabbed a thriller. The more I'm talking, the more I'm realizing how predictable I am. I grabbed The Wife Between Us. I feel like someone that I follow on Instagram was raving about this book the other day, and that's why I finally broke down and got it. When you read this book, you will make many assumptions. You will assume you're reading about a jealous ex-wife. You will assume she's obsessed with her replacement, a beautiful younger woman who is about to marry the man they both love. You will assume you know the anatomy of this tangled love triangle. Assume Nothing. Doesn't that sound so freaking good? I'm very excited about this one. So yeah, make sure to go check that link down below in my description and use the code READON to get $5 off if you want to try book of the month this month. And without further ado, let's get into my favorite books that I've read. So I went back and forth with myself. I was like, do I talk about all of the books that I really liked to loved, or do I pare this down to the absolute favorite must-read books? We went with the latter. So we only have 6 books to talk about today, but this is legitimately the best of the best that I've read so far this year. No, like, I kind of liked it. It was good. 4 stars. Like, these are 5 stars. Loved them. You have to read them. So I guess we'll go in chronological order based on when I read them in the year. So the first one that I read this year was Tell Me Lies by Carola Levering. If you watch all of my videos, you'll probably already know what these are. Tell Me Lies, though, was a surprising one for me. I actually almost didn't get it because I saw that it had really negative reviews. And after reading it, I completely understand the negative reviews. It's a new adult kind of romance novel that's following 2 different timelines. Our main character's name is Lucy, and we're starting her journey as a freshman in college. And then the second timeline, I want to say it's like 10 years later, when her college friends have all come together again for one of their weddings. And so basically the book is following this really toxic relationship, on and off again relationship that she has with this guy Steven, who she met in college. And so I don't even know if I can say I loved this book, because this book was like deeply upsetting to me. I think if you've ever been in a similar situation, you'll really relate to it. I think the author did a perfect job of capturing this kind of situation. So it is a very frustrating book to read. The characters, almost all of them, are really unlikable. I think if you're interested in psychology, it's very interesting because the guy is like straight up a sociopath. And poor Lucy, our main character, is just this like naive, borderline stupid college freshman. Sorry if the frame just changed and I completely lost my train of thought on what we were talking about. My groceries just got delivered. So, Tell Me Lies. Yeah, I think if you haven't been in this kind of situation, you'll just find the book to be really frustrating and the characters to be stupid and unlikable and to make bad decisions. But I also thought it was kind of interesting that it gets darker than you would expect, and it has more of like a thriller vibe than a romance. Like, this obviously is not supposed to be a romance. So this is one of my favorite books of the year, mostly because this is one that has really stuck with me, and I think is going to stick with me for a long time, as like any book that you really relate to does. So just like realistic wise, I think it was really well done. My second favorite book that I read this year, totally different vibe to it, was The How and the Why by Cynthia Hand. This is a young adult contemporary novel, and our main character is adopted. And so we're switching off back and forth between her point of view when she's a senior in high school and she's worrying about, you know, what college am I going to go to? How am I affording college? And also her mom is really sick and in the hospital. And then back to her birth mom, who gave birth to her when she was like 16, and she went to this school with a bunch of other pregnant girls, and her life was not what her daughters ended up being. She had a really tumultuous relationship with her family, and it ended up just being like a really touching book. It's like 450 pages for contemporary, which is very long, but it didn't feel long to me at all. I loved both point of views. Like, I really sympathized with both of these characters. And basically the book is about the daughter. She's supposed to have access to these letters that her mother wrote her now that she's 18, and so she starts to look into her birth mom. Yeah, our main character is really into theater and stuff, so I think if you're into that, you'll really like the book. And it was just very wholesome and touching and heartwarming, and I really liked it. Like, this is not at all the kind of genre that I typically read. This was one of our book club picks on my Patreon book club, and I'm so glad that everybody voted for this book because I ended up really loving it. I did kind of have the feeling that I would like it because I've read some of Cynthia Hand's books in the past, and I know that I just really like her writing style. But yeah, if you're just looking for like a feel-good book, this low-key almost made me cry, but like in a good way, like happy tears. So if you just need something kind of, I don't even want to say fluffy because that kind of insinuates that it doesn't have substance, but I don't know, just something happy and comfy and cozy to read. It does deal with some dark stuff and it is upsetting at times, but overall I just thought it was a really wholesome book and I thought it was really cute. The next book I want to talk about is actually the whole series that I've read up to this point, which is the Arjano Vampire series. The first book is called A Quick Bite, and actually the 5th book in this series is on my TBR for this month. I've read the first 4 books, and I was just looking for kind of like a trashy paranormal romance series to get into, specifically for vampires. I love my vampires, and I was just looking for something easy to read, fun, literally fluffy, like not a lot of substance, and this series has exceeded all expectations that I even had for it. It's so funny. That's like the one thing I guess I wasn't expecting, was it's just very witty and humorous. I love Lindsay Sands' writing style, and everything is just so like ironic and tongue-in-cheek and just like making fun of itself and super self-aware. I think they're hilarious. I love the audiobooks, would highly recommend listening to them that way. But yeah, I blew through the first 4 books in the series, decided I needed a little bit of a break after 4 in a row, but now I'm going back to the 5th one. So basically each book follows a different couple, and one member of that couple is a vampire from this Arjano family who's kind of like vampire royalty in this world. Like, they have a lot of power, they own powerful businesses and stuff. And I usually don't like series like that where you're following a different character each time because I get so attached to main characters, so it's hard for me to switch. But honestly, each couple has been equally entertaining and fun and interesting to read about. I think so far my favorite is the 3rd one because the vampire we're following is this like hermit writer 400-year-old vampire who hates people, and I thought he was hilarious. But everyone told me like some of the later books get even better, so I'm gonna have to keep reading. There's like 30 books in this series. Like, I could just spend all year reading these books. But yeah, if you're just looking for something kind of light and fun to bring you back to your like Twilight days, that's kind of the vibe I was going for, I guess. I've been having a lot of fun with these books. They've been really great to swap in between like heavier books. They're easy to fly through. They're funny. You got your steamy vampire scenes. It's basically everything that I wanted in a book. My favorite adult paranormal romance series that I have tried so far, by far. As like light and fluffy and kind of trashy as these books are, I actually think they're really well done. Like, the world is very interesting and obviously well developed. So basically the Arjano family, they own this like synthetic blood company, which is how the vampires survive without eating humans. And the first book is about Lysandra, and she faints at the sight of blood, so she's not able to consume blood that way, so she has to feed off of humans. So you get this whole side of like blood affects the vampires differently depending on the diet of the human and if the human is healthy, and there's like certain kinds of blood that people like if people are diabetic, the blood is really sweet, or like things like that. And I don't know, it was just like a very different take on vampires, and I found the whole like society very interesting. Also, the first book starts off with this guy literally shoving a cucumber down his pants to try to get girls. So like, that's the tone that the series sets. It's very funny. So the next book I have to talk about was a thriller, and that was A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This was another one of our book club picks for Patreon. We've had some good book club picks. I knew I was gonna like this because I love thrillers so much. However, this is a young adult thriller, and I tend to like adult thrillers more than I like young adult ones, and this is the first young adult one that I could say is like a favorite, and it's really stood out to me. I think what made the biggest difference for me is I liked the main character. I felt like she was fully fleshed out, fully developed, and a really interesting person too. Her name's Pip. Very spirited, like the kind of person I want to be friends with. And basically Pip is doing a school project her senior year where she wants to investigate a cold case that happened in her small town where the pretty and popular girl named Andy went missing and her body was never found. And basically the town just concluded that her boyfriend had killed her and then committed suicide. But Pip doesn't think that's what actually happened, so she's looking into the case. And so I really liked Pip. That's one plus side. And then also the twists at the end of the book, like you think you have it figured out. And that was the one thing that everybody told me going into this book. I think it's even in the synopsis of the book, is you're never gonna guess the ending. So here I am going into this book thinking, I have to guess this ending now. Like, everyone said I'm not going to. It was like my life's mission to figure out what the ending was gonna be before I got there. I couldn't do it. I listened to it on audiobook. Would highly recommend that way because it's like a multimedia kind of format. You have these like voice recordings from interviews, and Pip has these like reports that she does for school, and the audiobook just has all of these like sound effects and stuff. It just made it like a really immersive experience. I specifically would recommend listening to the audiobook and following along in the book. That's how I read it, and it was fabulous. I actually have a full 24-hour reading vlog the day I did this because that's literally like all I did all day. It was so good. I had so much fun with this book. There's a sequel that is out now and I still haven't read it, and I don't know why, and I really need to. The next book I have to talk about is a recent read, and I knew it was going to be a favorite before I even picked it up. That was Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. I think you guys know I love Riley Sager's books. He writes adult thrillers, and I think why I like his books so much is because they kind of walk the line between thriller and horror pretty often, and they also often have like the potential to go into something supernatural. Like, you don't know if everything's rooted in reality or if there's going to be like a psychological twist to it or a paranormal twist to it. So I like the uncertainty with his books on which way he's going to go. And Home Before Dark is my new favorite of his. If you liked The Haunting of Hill House, I found this to be very similar, and I think that's why I liked it so much. So our main character lived in this old house with her family when she was 5, and I think they only lasted like 20 days in that house before they fled and never went back and just like left all of their stuff there, and they made a police report saying the house is haunted, we're never coming back. And then her dad is an author, and he went on to write a book about their experience there and the house being haunted and published it as nonfiction. Like, this all really happened. This house is really haunted. We almost died there, like all this crazy stuff. And the book ended up being a huge hit, and it's followed the main character her entire life. I can't remember her name, I'm sorry. I think it started with an M. Maggie, maybe? So basically, she really resents her dad because she thinks he lied about everything. She doesn't remember anything happening at that house. She thinks he made it all up. And then that book has followed her entire life. Like, people recognize her as the girl from the book. And she also feels like he portrayed her in a way in that book, like that's not what she was like. And so basically, now that she's an adult, she inherits this house and she goes back there, even though everyone in her life has always warned her, never go back to that house. I freaking loved this book. I knew I was going to, because I love thrillers. I love spooky things, so like spooky thrillers, everything I love. But let me tell you, this book, it was like, the one thing I complain the most about in thrillers is when authors have a missed opportunity and they don't make it creepy enough. They don't like play up the setting and they don't make it atmospheric. This book had all of that. Like, I was thoroughly creeped out. I felt like I was watching a horror movie. I loved it. And then I think it was like 75% of the way through. I was starting to get worried because I felt like I was guessing all of the plot twists and I was getting underwhelmed, and I was like, I can't believe this is it. Like, I expected so much more from him because the ending of his last book was awesome. And then it was like twist, 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 and I was so pleased. So I loved the ending. I loved the twist. I loved the atmosphere. It was interesting because the book switches off between a chapter from the book that her dad wrote and then what's actually happening in her life now. So I always like kind of like switching off timelines like that, especially because you don't know if what you're reading about in his book actually happened, if it's real or not, or if he just made it up. So this is definitely my favorite creepy book that I've read so far this year. If you're looking for something to read in October around Halloween time, would totally recommend. And then my final book to talk about today, I read just last month, was City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert. Another totally different genre. This is a historical, I guess it's just historical fiction, it's not romance. We're following our main character, Vivian, and the narrative structure is interesting because the whole book isn't Vivian telling someone else her life story now that she's like 90 years old. Basically, this girl writes a letter to Vivian saying, my mother just passed away, so will you now tell me who you were to my father? So we don't know who this girl is, who's writing the letter. And we have no idea who her father is. And so we're following Vivian from when she's 19, it's the 1940s in between the wars, and she's in New York City. She's a party girl. She recently failed out of college, and she's basically parading around town with these showgirls who she's befriended. And so the whole book you're kind of wondering like, which guy is gonna be this girl's father? Because a lot of men come and go from Vivian's life. She's very promiscuous, having a good time. As we've previously established on this channel, we are pro-ho over here, we support. And so I found it really interesting, the little mystery aspect, like who is the man gonna be and who will Vivian end up being to this girl's father. But then also I just really liked Vivian as a character. I thought she was really interesting to follow through her youth, and you get to see some really formative things happen to her, and she changes very drastically over the story. I loved the setting. I loved being in New York in the 1940s. I thought Elizabeth Gilbert did a really good job of painting that scene. And it's a long book. I didn't really realize how long it was because I listened to the audiobook, and I would recommend reading it that way. But you cover a lot of ground, and I became very attached to these characters by the end. Like, I felt like I knew them so well. And the book did not at all go the way that I was expecting it to. The ending kind of came out of nowhere, and it was really interesting. I actually attended a virtual author visit with Elizabeth Gilbert through my library, just like on a Zoom call. And so she was talking about the process of writing this book and stuff, and she was like, I didn't know what the ending was gonna be either. I didn't know who the guy was gonna be. I just figured the story would like figure itself out. Yeah, I really enjoyed this one. This is another one that's just gonna be super memorable to me, and characters that just like really stick with me. They felt like people that I knew in my real life. And I don't usually read very much historical fiction, but I really, really loved this one. I also just love Elizabeth Gilbert, so yeah, I can't recommend this one enough. So those are all of my favorite books that I've read so far this year. I would love to hear down below in the comments if you've read any of these, what you thought of them, or if you can choose a favorite book that you've read so far this year. Please recommend it to me down below. I feel like this happens to me every year. I have like a slow start in the first half of the year, and then the second half of the year is when I read like all of my favorite books of the year. So we'll see if that's the case this year as well. So yeah, I'll have all of these books linked down below in the description if you want to go check them out. My book's out now. It's called The Anti-Virginity Pact. It's a young adult contemporary novel if you want to pick up a copy. And my second poetry collection, Poems for the End of the World, is coming out October 1st. We're getting close. You can pre-order it now or add it on Goodreads. I would love you forever. And yeah, there's a ton of other stuff down below in the description if you feel so inclined to go check it out. But if you're new here, I would love it if you would subscribe and stick around. Maybe give this video a thumbs up if you want to make me happy. And I'll just see you guys in my next video very, very soon. Bye.
So hit me. So hit me. So hit me. First a confession. With you I feel a connection. With